So, the topic is vulnerability. Has anybody been feeling vulnerable these days? You can do this. If just in case, maybe I put you on mute and you can just do sign language. Maybe that'll be, or maybe you put yourself on mute because I'm not sure how to do that on the computer. I learned everything with the phone, but now I don't know how to do things with the computer. So, can you hear me? Because some of you seem frozen. Some of the, yeah, Claire? Because you look frozen. Yeah, I hope you can hear me because your video is totally frozen. Anyway, I will continue as if you can hear me, and hopefully I'm not talking to myself. So the first thing I wanted to do was to work some breathing so that we can connect inside to our breathing, and then we will go into some talking. So come into a comfortable sitting position so that you're sitting, I suggest sitting up on something. Like me, I'm using a blanket like that. Gives me just enough to feel like I'm able to keep my pelvis tilted without making very much effort. And then this way my spine can feel nice and long. And I don't have to do too much work for that. So close the eyes for a moment. Feel like you can elongate the spine so that the head feels light on top of the spine. Relax the arms so you can place the arms in any position that feels comfortable for you on the legs, just so that the legs can take the weight of the arms. Allowing the shoulders to relax, the jaw, the skin on the back of the neck, relaxing around the mouth, inside the mouth, so the palate feels relaxed, the tongue feels relaxed, the insides of the cheeks. Relaxing around the eyes, the eye sockets, behind the eyes. Allowing the forehead to relax and the point between the eyebrows. Then bring yourself inwards so you notice the vibration of the inner body. It's like you can feel yourself from the inside out. Starting to concentrate on the breath, just noticing the breath, noticing its natural rhythm, noticing the areas that move with the inhales, the areas that move the exhales, so that you feel familiar with your own breathing pattern. Recognizing what a pleasure it is to be able to breathe. And we're going to start to do some rhythmic breathing. So meaning that the inhales and the exhales, we're going to try to make them the same length. So exhale fully, and then inhale, exhale, inhaling, you can make a soft sound with the breath. Exhaling. Inhale. Exhale. Inhaling. Exhaling. Continuing at your own breathing rhythm. We're going to transition into Nadi Shodhana. So if you know the mudra, bring your hand in the mudra so that you bring the first finger and the middle finger in, and then bring the two end fingers close together. And so we can close one nostril with the thumb, the other nostril with the ring finger. So bring your hand into that mudra. Close the eyes again if you open them. We always start a pranayama exercise by fully exhaling. So exhale all the air out of the body, pulling in the lower abdominals to make sure you exhale completely. Close the right nostril, inhale through the left. Close the left nostril, exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Close the right, exhale through the left. Inhale left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Exhale left. So this is one round, and see if you can do 10 more rounds. Inhaling left, exhale right, inhale right, exhale left. That's one round. Trying to make a soft sound with the breathing. Using that sound to calm the nervous system. Trying to keep the awareness on the breath. If the awareness slips away, just gently bring it back to the project at hand. If you've finished, then just show me by putting your hands on the legs. You can keep the eyes closed. You can bring the hands in front of the chest. And we'll chant an Om. And then rub the hands together, just making the palms warm. And then put the hands over the eyes. Open the eyes behind the palms. when you're ready, just releasing the arms, the hands. So, what is vulnerability? So I looked it up on the dictionary online, the Oxford Dictionary, and this is what they say vulnerability is. So it's a quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, physically or emotionally. So it's a threat to our own security. So clearly, when you read a description like this, we don't want to feel that, right? You can nod or thumbs up, or so I know that you can hear me. So culturally, this is something that we are trying to avoid, to feel vulnerable. But we're going to look at this and see if maybe this is really serving us, or maybe it's not serving us. So this is why we try to cover up our vulnerability, because of what I just stated. So it can be seen as a weakness. We as a culture, we see vulnerability as a weakness, as something flawed. So we don't want to be seen as weak. We don't want others to see our flaws, right? And then also our sympathetic nervous system, this is made for our survival. We want to, it's conditioned so that we have, the sympathetic nervous system is for our fight, flight, or freeze. So when we feel vulnerable, or when we feel like something is going to attack our survival, we either fight back, or we freeze, we don't react at all, or we run away. This is the way our nervous system reacts to things that are going to potentially injure it. Now, at some point when we were out in the wilderness fighting for our lives, this sympathetic nervous system really served us well. But nowadays, I think that sometimes it's not really serving us, because it's not really very often that we are running away from an enemy, or having to really fight for our survival. You know, this can be a whole different debate because of our you know, needing to fight for our jobs, for our family, and things like this. But generally, as we continue, it'll make a little bit more sense that this is, our nervous system is there to protect us. So what this can tell us is that, in fact, it's normal. It's normal to feel fearful of feeling vulnerable. It's normal that we don't want to feel vulnerable, so that we don't judge ourselves or blame ourselves for these kind of feelings. Does that make sense? And the natural selection of our biology is something that we are experiencing. We're experiencing it every moment. Our biology wants to make us survive. And in a individualistic society, which is kind of what we are living in, you know, like it's like the survival of the fittest, right? We've all heard that description of us. So we live in a society that is conditioning us since we're very young. Be strong, don't cry, you know, stand up for yourself, and these kinds of things. So we can see that we're working at this all the time, and how does this affect us? We perceive ourselves as separate from the other, separate from each other, which is a little bit weird, like doing this talk through a computer screen, because it adds that extra layer of separateness, right? I don't know, I feel it now because I'm used to giving talks, but it feels a bit strange to be doing this. Here, somebody's trying to come in. It feels already like we're a separate entity, and then we're on a computer screen, so that it exemplifies this. In the Yoga Sutras, maybe some of you have heard about Abhinivesha. Yes, no, Abhinivesha, the clinging to life, the will to survive, the fear of death. It can be translated as any of those. Has everybody heard of this, Abhinivesha? Just put up your hand if you've read the sutras and you recognize that, Abhinivesha. Maybe you're behind, maybe this computer's not working because nobody put up their hand. So I'll read you the translation of that sutra. It's clinging to life flows along under its own inclination, even in a wise person. So in other words, we experience vulnerability and we naturally want to hide this vulnerability from others, even if we're wise. Okay, does that make sense? I hope my internet, because it just said that it's experiencing an unstable internet. So I hope I don't know, I got a screen saying that. So how can we deal with this? We can ask ourselves, so how do we deal with this vulnerability? If we look at the yoga traditions, the way we deal with our vulnerability is that we want to experience freedom. So we want to experience freedom from this separation. So freedom from the separation towards each other, but also freedom of the separation from our soul and our body, from our mind, body, and our deeper self, or the ultimate reality. We can give many different definitions to it, but basically we want to experience unity. We want to experience yoga. So in the Yoga Sutras, it says that, it's in Sutra 211, that to overcome this clinging to life, we have to use meditation. So I like what Tara Brach calls it. We want to develop a loving presence. So when we can develop this loving presence with ourselves, then we don't have to have these layers be building on us to not want to deal with our vulnerability. Because basically I think what is happening is since we come into the world as a baby, we come in vulnerable and dependent on our mother and dependent on the group and the society to take care of us. And so we feel that deep sense of vulnerability. And then as we're growing up, we want to separate ourselves from our mother, right? Our family, and be able to live well on our own. But something kind of gets lost in the middle there, because we still want to keep some kind of connection with our, oh, somebody else trying to enter. I think they got the wrong time. We need to still keep connection, and we lose that connection with ourselves, from our inner selves. So I wanted to share you, the reason why I had the idea to talk about vulnerability is because at the beginning of this coronavirus epidemic, before Paris was shut down, before France was shut down, if you just think back, it's only a few weeks ago, like, what is it? It's like 4 weeks ago, 4.5 weeks ago. It's really a blip of time. But before this happened, and we were starting to hear on the news about the coronavirus, and people were starting to be afraid about, should I come to yoga classes? Is it clean enough? Am I going to catch something? Oh, somebody's talking. I heard somebody. I'm going to put you on. It's Myunga. Hey Myunga, I just muted you. So I was starting to feel like this strange feeling, like I'm reading on the news about all this stuff that's happening in the world, but in my own personal life I wasn't experiencing it. Does Does that call to some of you? Do some of you recognize yourself in that? Like it's something surreal. You're reading the news and something is happening, but in your daily life, you're just kind of going on like everything is normal, right? Yeah. And so I was experiencing this, but then on the other hand, I was also feeling like, okay, there's something going on here that I'm not feeling in my body, right? So I did some meditation on it, like what is happening in the world? What is going on? And I went inside and I tried to get deep inside myself, because what was happening was there was a numbing. I was like enveloping myself with a numbness so that I didn't want to feel the full effects of what was going on. I didn't want to come to terms with that I'm gonna have to close the yoga studio, right? Which when you close the yoga studio, what does this do? This makes you feel very vulnerable. This is the way we make our living, through the yoga studio. So maybe some of you experienced it in different ways through your own personal jobs, and especially I know some of you are independent workers, so you would have felt the same kind of feeling, like if I close all this, then how can I survive? If I'm not making an income, how do I pay my rent? How do I take care of my kids? How do I buy food, right? So what I recognized when I did this deep meditation was that I was actually numbing out to the whole situation. Have any of you ever felt this? Like when you read the news, like I keep describing it as surreal, but it was a sense of numbness. So I didn't have to feel what was happening with all those deaths and what is still happening with all these deaths and people getting sick, and the fact that our whole country is basically on shutdown. And so when I finally felt it, what happened was that I cried. I cried a lot. I just needed to release it. And so when I released all those tears, I felt a certain stableness. I was like, you know what? This is out of my hands. I can't change it. I can't do anything about it. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm not a healthcare professional. I'm not a scientist. I have no possibility to change this. I'm not in politics. I'm not in any of those industries where I can make a huge impact in how to take care of this. And so I just had to recognize that I had to just let go. It was a complete letting go. This is what it is. I need to just do whatever I can do. And so it took me a while. I kind of had to go into a little bit of a hibernation with my family for, I would say, about a week, where I was just like experiencing it and feeling my emotions and coming to terms with I am not the doer. I don't know if you guys have read some of the non-duality scriptures. So you are not the doer. And really feel that deep inside me. And then I was able to kind of come out of that little hibernation and say to myself, okay, what can I do? All I can do is do this kind of thing. I can share some yoga classes, I can share some talks, I can share some of my experiences, and maybe this does a small amount of help in that world. So it was that deep sense of vulnerability that brought me to a place of strength to be able to find it within myself to adapt to something different. Because I'm 52 years old. This whole thing doesn't really feel right to me. Instagram, even Facebook, it's older, but all this feels very strange to me. But, you know, I had to learn to adapt to a different way of communicating and sharing and being one with others. So I talked about the experience so we look at the vulnerability as it's like a self-armoring. Do you know what that is? Like, you know, like Tara Brach explains this beautiful mythology of a dragon, and a dragon with all its scales, and we have to remove those scales till we come to our very true self. And so this, we've been armoring ourselves for years. Year after year, we like those pretty colors of Tibetan flags behind you, Claire. You know, that's a good analogy. It's like we've placed all these different colors of paper on ourselves, or armor, or scales, and to get into the deep self, we have to slowly remove this armor, remove those colored flags, so that we can recognize the true self that we really are. Does that make some sense? Yes. And so it's coming to this place of freedom where it's always there, and to actually experience this place of freedom within. So meditation, mindfulness, getting aware. And Ramana Maharishi, he calls it vichara. So it's investigation, not mental investigation, not, how do I explain that? Not like, yeah, you know, I feel vulnerable because so-and-so said this to me, and that reminded me about what my parents used to say to me as a child, and so that blocked me down and I closed off to that person. Not this. This is very mental. It's more about self-investigation, going really deep inside. Who am I? And when you recognize who you truly are, it gives you this authenticity, this power within. I am me, and I feel good where I am with who I am. When you have that sense, then the vulnerability, we can look at the vulnerability from a place of love, a place of care, a place of embracing that vulnerability. So going back to my example of, wow, you know, this situation, I could embrace it. It's like, okay, this is where we are. I can be in my heart, and now I can move in a different way than I'm used to moving in the world, but a place from authenticity. So my question I wrote on my notes was, is it useful to cover up our vulnerability? I don't really think it is. You know, I'm not saying that, you know, we have to self-discover it before we can reveal it to others. Because it's not about just, you know, crying in front of everybody, totally exposing ourselves to everybody. You know, because we need to do this from a place of wisdom, a place of compassion. Does that make sense? Because I'm not telling you to just go out there and tell everybody, tell the world about your flaws. It's not about that. It's not just, you know, putting it all out there for everybody to see. It's more about something that's happening within you. And so when you can expose yourself to your own vulnerabilities, then you can care about yourself, and you can care about your vulnerabilities. Does that make sense? And when you do this, then it's like you are wrapping your own self with compassion, with loving presence, with love, with care. And so when I can wrap my own self with that, then I have the ability to be myself in front of others. I don't have that little voice. You know, do you all have that little voice on the shoulder that's telling you, oh, you said that wrong. Oh, you don't look very good. Especially I see myself, like, that's so annoying. You know, maybe I shouldn't have wore that sweater, you know. I still have that little voice. I don't really look good in that little sweater, right? You know, that little voice that is telling you all those judgments about yourself. So when you can embrace it, then it's able to kind of wither away, you know, go away. So when we cover up our vulnerability, we armor ourselves. We don't experience our authentic self. And then the other thing that happens is we react. We don't act with mindfulness, we just react. So we react with maybe anger. We react by experiencing depression. We react with fear. We react by blaming others. Does that make sense? We just react. Whereas when we have this experience of our authentic self, we act with mindfulness. So it's we are able to take a moment, see what's happening there, and then act with mindfulness. Right? Do you know the mindfulness bell? I like this, the mindfulness bell that just keeps bringing yourself back to yourself. And then when we have that armor, it creates distance. Not only distance within ourselves, but distance with each other. Distance in your relationships. Distance between your spouse, between your family, your sister, your brothers, your parents, your own children. Who's a mother there? Does anybody have children? Go like this if you have kids. Nobody has a child. Well, you'll see when you become, if you become a mother. Oh, I saw one hand go up, but slow motion, I think, because of my internet connection. It went up really slow and it came down really slow. Yes, good, thank you. So when you have children, one of the, there's several worst nightmares when you have children, and builds a lot of fear. But one of your worst nightmares is that your kids are going to grow up and say that, Mom, it's your fault, blah, 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 because of all these things. And then I say to myself, oh my God, that's all I did for so many years. Mom or Dad, it's your fault that I'm, because I'm like this, or because I'm like that, whatever your judgments are towards yourself. So we don't want to create that distance. And we want to be able to recognize that, I am my mother. My children are me, but they are also separate. They are their own people as well. Does that make sense? So it's not that because they are me that they have to behave like me. They can be their own authentic self at the very same time as we are all connected together. So we don't want to have that armored self because we don't want to create distance. And it also, I think when we have that armored self, we have this feeling of incompleteness, like something is missing. Does that make sense? Do you feel this sometime? Like something is missing within me. And so when we can start to go deep and feel what is there and recognize our vulnerability, then we allow ourselves to see maybe why do we feel this incompleteness? So like the example that I was using about myself, feeling this numbness, I was just like, I feel numb to the whole situation because I couldn't go inside and I couldn't recognize what was really happening. So there was a sense of incompleteness, feeling detached from the whole situation in our country and our world. And then another thing that happens when we don't recognize our own vulnerability and connect with it is that our other people's nervous systems pick it up. So if I'm feeling vulnerable, then what will happen is I want to hide my vulnerability. So I don't want you to see that I'm vulnerable. So I may say and act and behave in ways that are not authentic to myself. And somehow, even if you don't know, you don't recognize exactly why you're feeling it, but you're going to feel some distance or fakeness or inauthenticity from me. And so when you feel that, this is helping create that distance. Does that make sense? Right? So my inauthenticity with myself is revealing itself on a subtle level towards you. And so you pick up on that, and so you're not feeling, it's kind of creating this circular thing happening. I don't feel good in myself. You recognize somehow that I don't feel good in myself, but you may take it as you're not good in yourself, right? You might take it as blaming yourself somehow. And so it keeps that circle going where we cannot connect. Whereas when I feel good and authentic in myself and you start to feel that, then we can connect together and we can feel that state of union, that state of togetherness. And this is what we need in our society, especially right now, but always, not only right now. I think right now we're being tested, but we need this always because we are social beings. We need each other. If you drop me in the forest, I'm not going to be able to survive. You know, I need people to build a home for me. I need people that bring the food to the grocery store so I can go buy that food. We need this from each other. So what I think we need to do is we need to learn to relate with our vulnerability. So we can't just say, oh, I'm feeling vulnerable. Push it away, go away. I see it, okay, now I'm gonna use my strong willpower to say, I'm not vulnerable. Sometimes I'm wondering about all these phrases, these motivational phrases that we have, if they're, not saying all motivational phrases, but sometimes it feels like they're giving us a false sense of security. It's like we're trying to hypnotize ourselves. I am strong, I am powerful, I am good at this, I am great at that, I am beautiful, I am amazing. If it's a mental thing, then it's gonna create more disconnect. Because inside, if I'm telling myself, I am amazing, I am good at this, I am great, I can do this, I am strong, but I don't feel it deep inside, it's going to create more disconnection. Does that make sense? Right? Because it's coming just from the mind, it's not coming from the heart. Whereas if I go deep inside, then I feel my vulnerability, and I deepen my attention to my vulnerability. So I deepen my awareness, mindfulness towards it. Then I recognize that vulnerability, what does it want? It wants to be loved. It wants to be cared for. And so with compassion and wisdom, we can slowly work to disarm ourselves. But it has to come from the heart, not from the mind. We can use the mind to help us on the path, but ultimately we need to connect in with the heart. And when we experience this, so at the beginning I said that vulnerability is, when I talked about the description, the Oxford Dictionary description, it's about the possibility of being attacked or harmed physically or emotionally. So we would say to ourselves, oh, okay, if that's the possibility, that means I need to be strong, right? But In fact, true strength comes from experiencing this place of authenticity. Okay, so true strength. Because when you have that, you're going to be able to face the world with its ups and downs, with coronavirus, without coronavirus, with financial difficulties, without financial difficulties, with interpersonal difficulties, you know, problems with a spouse, problems with a loved one, problems with each other, right? When we have the authentic self, we're going to be able to approach all that with loving awareness, with compassion. So I guess that's my little spiel about why it would be important to recognize your vulnerability, because I think as a society this is not natural for us. But if you examine it deeply, even from a mental aspect, we can see that it makes more sense not to cover up our vulnerability, but to actually feel it and experience it. Let the emotions go. Like I told you, I had to cry. I had to let all that go to be able to find the strength to be in this situation. I wish that I could talk to you more, because I would love to hear your experiences. If you want, you can email it to me. I would be really curious. But we are in this situation. So now what I'd like to do is just a quick little meditation to go inside and see if you can feel where you are vulnerable. I don't suggest using any really strong place at the beginning. Like maybe use, like if you're going through something that is overwhelming, that isn't the first place to start. We have to start small. We start with little things. So maybe small experiences. If you want to use the situation we're in right now, this is what I was going to guide you through. But if you want to use something else, you're welcome to use something else. Okay, so come back to a comfortable sitting position where your sitting bones are even on your blanket or bolster or block, whatever you're sitting on. And close the eyes. And see if you can bring yourself back inside so that you can feel yourself from the inside. See if you can bring your awareness to any feelings you may have about the confinement, how it is affecting you, maybe how it's affecting you emotionally. Missing the social connection with your friends, connections with your yoga community, connections with your work friends, colleagues. Just that freedom to be able to go to a cafe, be in the presence of other human beings. contact with how this may be affecting you inside. Not rationalizing it away. You know, we could rationalize it away by saying everybody's feeling this and I need to be strong and I need to accept it. Rather than rationalizing it away, feeling how much you miss the contact. And allowing yourself to miss it, to mourn it. Allowing yourself to recognize how many other people are out there feeling that the exact same. To varying degrees. Maybe others are feeling stronger. Maybe some don't have the skills to sit quietly and allow themselves this loving presence. Maybe because of this, they act unskillfully. They act with anger or violence, criticism, blame. And when people behave this way, it can trigger us. It can trigger us to react back. However, when we sit in mindful presence, we can recognize ourselves in others, even in others who are behaving in ways that we don't approve of. When we can recognize ourselves in the others, it starts to bring in some compassion. You can feel for them. We feel for them because we feel for ourselves. Likewise, maybe our feelings of loneliness or despair or depression, lack of connection. So some may be experiencing it and unable to recognize it and behave unskillfully. Others we might look at and say that they don't have to experience confinement. Maybe they're living somewhere where they don't have this confinement, or maybe they have a bigger property or bigger home where they don't experience it in the same way we do. This is also a way of othering, of of separating ourselves. By saying some other people don't have it as bad as us. It creates separation. And we don't recognize when we do this othering or saying they don't have it as bad as I do. It's not experiencing our authentic self. It's not allowing us to fully be present with our vulnerability. It's making excuses. We don't need to make an excuse. If you feel vulnerable or sad or any of the feelings you may be feeling, it doesn't make us less than. So we won't need to make excuses for ourselves. Because we just are. We can be just as we are. We're full. We're complete. We're complete despite our unskillful behavior, despite our comparing, and see if you can feel this in the heart, not in the mind, but feel this place where you are perfect. Perfect with the flaws, with the vulnerability, and just being quiet. See if you can fill the heart with this loving presence. And then you can bring the hands in front of the chest. And if you know what a mindfulness bell is, you can look on your phone app, keeping the eyes closed. But after this is finished, you can find on your phone there's something called a mindfulness bell. And if you're interested, I would suggest that you set your mindfulness bell, however, at any interval you prefer. And each time the bell goes off, just take a moment to close your eyes. Go inside, feel yourself from the inside. start to develop this loving kindness for yourself. No matter what feelings come up, no matter what thoughts pass through the mind, even unkind thoughts towards yourself or towards others, just see them, recognize them, and send them love. Send yourself love. Send others love from the heart. And we'll chant Om Shanti to finish. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Namaste. You can open your eyes. Thank you. Thank you for sharing with me. Let me know if it's useful. If you find it useful, then I can continue doing, I can pick a topic and do this every week with a little pranayama, a little self-reflection. You can just send me a message or whatever. But if you're interested, I love to share. Okay. Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye. Namaste.
Thank you, Lina. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lina.
Thank you. Try it out. Give me some feedback if it works, if it helps.